Hello, my name is Maya Gurney. I'm 21 years old and I'm from suburban Perth. I have a passion for movies and filmmaking and I'm an aspiring screenwriter. This podcast is all about my journey in becoming a screenwriter. Come with me as I interview fellow filmmakers and discuss my favourite movies and share my thoughts and ideas. G'day, I'm here today with a special guest, writer, director and producer Shane McNeil, to ask him some simple questions about filmmaking. Hello and welcome, Shane. Thank you for joining me on this episode.
Hi Maya, thank you so much for having me, and all the more so because it's your first podcast. I feel very honoured. Thank you.
Thanks. I grew up with a huge love of movies and now I'm studying to become a world-famous screenwriter. What inspired you to be a filmmaker in particular?
Oh, good question, Maya. A bit like you, I think I started out first as a writer and then became a filmmaker by accident, probably because it's very hard, as you might know, for writers to get their films made into films. So my memory was I sort of became an accidental filmmaker. A lot of people when they start out, like yourself, have a passion because they love movies. Most people do, and they go, this is what I want to do. But I didn't discover that till I think I was in my 20s at university. And I accidentally did a film course and found out I was okay at it and thought, oh, this is all right, and started doing more and more and made films and sort of accidentally became a filmmaker. So, but I always loved movies and it's always been a passion like you. So I think that's what the core is. When you love what you do in your spare time, and if you can do it for a career, that's the best way to live one's life.
What movie inspired your filmmaking career the most?
Oh, another very good question. One of my earliest memories involves a film, and I remember walking out of the Piccadilly Cinema in North Adelaide, with my mother and my grandmother, and I can remember it. It's walking down the staircase from the upper balcony into the sunlight, and we'd just seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I must have been very young. I don't know why they would take, I think I must have been 6 or something, to see that film. And my mother says, I asked her as we're walking outside, how did the baby get in space? I hope that's not a spoiler. No, it's not. If you haven't seen it, it's a 50-year embargo. If you haven't seen the film, it's not spoiling it. And there's a very famous scene with that. And my mum said, well, I don't know. Let's find out. And the next day she took me to a library. It's obviously before the internet. And we borrowed some books. And I think that's the first time I started inquiring about film. And that film has stayed with me for my entire life. And when I became a film lecturer, I used to make my students watch it. It's quite a very philosophical and engaging film, but it goes for about 2.5 hours. So I had to lock the doors so they wouldn't leave. But afterwards, all of them, and some of them are now famous filmmakers, came up and thanked me for showing them that film. So I think that'd be it. 2001: A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it to anyone. It's a masterpiece, still is.
What was the first movie you ever made?
Well, again, like a lot of other filmmakers, I didn't make films in my teenage years. I was just reading and watching films. And I didn't make a film until I went to university, and I made a short 16mm film called A Fratricide, based on a short story by Franz Kafka. And that did okay, and it got me, that's my first amateur film. And then after university, my first professional film was a film with the most ridiculous title, which I did deliberately because I thought if I put it into festivals, they'd probably program it because it sounded so bizarre. It was called, you ready, Maya? An Apocryphal History of Meat, Part 4, The Brotherhood of Meat. And it was a fake documentary about butchers. And it was just a joke film, and it did really well. In fact, it was so, I guess, convincing, even though it was badly made, it got invited to documentary film festivals. They thought it was sort of half documentary, and they used to send me, can we watch parts 1 to 3, which is why I called it part 4. So that was my first real movie. That was funded by the South Australian Film Corporation.
I usually get my ideas for screenwriting from other people's movies. Where do you usually get your ideas for filmmaking?
I guess it's different for everyone. Some people sort of just have ideas every day. I'm unfortunately not one of those. But I think as you get older, you're right. You start off looking at other films and going, oh, I like that. I could make something like that. A Western, science fiction, a chase film. And then they go, well, I could do it differently. And I think all filmmakers probably start by imitating other filmmakers, and that's fine. And then you get to a point where you start finding your own voice, and you say, I'm good at this, and I want to say this. So I think, and then as I got older, I just look at things, and I could look at a situation and go, okay, there's a few people in this room. What happened if one of them was a robot? And we didn't, you can just say, what if? So a good way is just to sort of think of a situation and think, what if something? And that can lead you to lots of dramatic pathways. And the other way is, I'll give you an example of that. I wrote a short film recently called The Suitcase, and it literally occurred because one day I was walking home and there was a suitcase in the middle of the road, not on the footpath, in the middle of the road. And cars were going around it, like a big suitcase, an old suitcase. And so I went up to it and I sort of touched it and I thought, is it a trap? Is it a bomb? And I picked it up and it had something in it. I shook it and it was making a noise, but it was locked. And I took it over and I put it on the footpath and I left it there. And every day for about a week, I just watch it and just see what happened. And then one day it was just gone. And then I wrote a script about what was in that suitcase and who found it and why. So just little things. I think it's just keep your eyes open around when you're looking at life and you just focus. I think good writers are always looking for the little cracks in life.
In character profiles, do you get to decide on the actors' ages, genders and nationalities?
Oh yes, that's one of the best parts about being a writer is you get to play God. You can decide who is who, how old, what gender, what sexuality, what nationality, what they wear, what they look at. The difficult part comes is when directors make the films and they go, no, he's a she, no, they're tall, no, they're small. And so writers sometimes lose a little bit of their original autonomy, unfortunately. But yes, generally, as the writer, you create the character. The only exception I probably think of is if in Hollywood, say, where Tom Cruise says, I want to play that role,
yes.
Then as a writer, you would say, okay, he looks like this, because you're writing it for them. So, but yes, in answer to your question, yeah, that is the writer's job.
At least how many words and pages should one script contain? Because every movie goes on for a different amount of time.
Yes, you're right. This is an eternal question. We generally have a rule of thumb in filmmaking that 1 page equals 1 minute of screen time. And most movies would be between 90 minutes and 120 minutes, so 90 pages to 120 pages. I have a personal philosophy, and so does one of my colleagues, who says that if your film is over 90 minutes, you better earn it. You better make me want to stay for the extra 15, 20, 30 minutes. Lots of films you probably know, you watch Maya and you go, oh, they're just so long, and they just get on with it. So that's the rule. Alfred Hitchcock, the famous director, once said the length of a film should be directly proportional to the endurance of the human bladder. So you should be able to watch it without wanting to go to the toilet once.
True or false, if I was writing a movie set in a country where English wasn't usually spoken, I would have to speak to someone from that country and ask them what it's like living there.
Yeah, that depends. If it's your story and you're setting your story in a different culture, then you'd probably at least seek some sort of consultation or collaboration about the representation of that country. But if it was entirely set in that country with a specific culture, then it would probably be advantageous to seek collaboration at a very early stage to make it authentic as well. Unless it's a lived experience, it's very hard and probably unadvised for people to appropriate other cultures. So that's a depend. Generally, as a rule of thumb, I guess we shouldn't write about things we don't know about.
Is a producer the one who gets to decide which filming studio should produce my movies?
In Hollywood, yes. In Australia, we don't have studios. We sort of make films with either like television networks or streamers like Stan, Netflix, Amazon, or we make them for the cinema through theatrical distributors like Umbrella, Madman, Icon, those sorts of companies. So producers would do the deals in Australia with those companies. But in Hollywood, say you write a film and it becomes successful, then a studio might say, Maya, what else you got? So sometimes studios will seek out directors or writers as well and say, can you come and work for us? But yes, generally, the majority of the time the producer would be working with a studio in Hollywood, but we don't have that structure in Australia.
What are some of the things that a screenwriter gets to do on the set of a film? Because I would like to know what else I would get to do as a screenwriter besides the actual writing.
Well, there are many, many horror stories in Hollywood, Maya, about writers who write scripts and then have fights, and then the director or the producer bans them from the set, and they don't even get to see their own movie until it's actually on the screen. That's the worst case scenario. But the best case scenario is a writer has a good relationship with what happens is a writer will write a script and a producer will option it. They'll say, I like your script, Maya, we're going to make it. And they pay you money to buy the rights. And then they get a director who says, I'm going to make this film. So it goes from writer to producer to director. If the writer has a good relationship with the producer or the director, they would probably say, come on set, have a look, give some advice. And sometimes in Hollywood, if they have a good relationship, they will get the writer on set to do rewrites. If things aren't working, they'll ask them, can you just go away and fix this scene? Because they're looking at what's going on, so they've got knowledge. Generally in Hollywood, they probably wouldn't let the writer on set, which is why a lot of writers, and this is my advice to you as an emerging screenwriter, filmmaker, is to think about, because you've made films as well, think about how you could actually become a writer-director. And then you can control your own film. So in Hollywood, a lot of writers on TV end up becoming producers so they can run their own TV series called showrunners. So that's a way that a lot of writers have got more power. And a lot of writers in Hollywood have decided, I'm sick of what directors are doing to my films. I'm going to direct them myself. So I can write and direct and I know exactly what I want and I make sure it's on the screen.
How is making South Australian movies different from making Western Australian ones?
Well, I'll probably get in trouble for answering this question, but I originally came from South Australia and spent most of my life making films there, and I've only been in WA for about a year and a half. But I'm going to say one word, it's probably money. Films cost a lot of money, and Western Australia seems to have a lot of money to support filmmaking, and a lot of filmmakers are making great films over here. And so in South Australia it was a bit harder, there wasn't a lot of money, it was more competitive, but over here I think it's a much more fertile and creative environment. And I guess, money helps make films, but also creativity. I find, and again, this is just my opinion, I find that there's a lot of creativity here. I'm very impressed by the number of people I meet every day, including yourself right now. Every day I meet someone, I go, wow, really impressing me with your ability to make films and find ways to explore your creative potential. And so that makes me want to stay here. So yes, in the short term, it's both, I'll say money and creativity, and I'll probably get in trouble for that.
I usually ask myself to write movies, but will I ever get asked to do this by a director?
Oh yes, of course. I think, I saw your short film and then you make another short film and someone will see that and say, I like that, could you write me something? And you write it. And the idea as a writer is you need to make a film that makes an impact. When I say impact, it means it's got to get a response. So the best way to do that with short films, because they're so hard to program, is to get it into a festival and to get somebody to like it and see it, and then they ask you to write something else. So I think that's probably the best way. And then eventually, like I said earlier, you might write a couple of films and then you'll say, I think I could direct this myself. And you can write and direct, and then you take more control of your creative expression. And there's a lot of famous writers who've done that. There's that film out now called Civil War. That was made by Alex Garland. He used to be a novelist, just wrote novels, and then he wrote for Danny Boyle, who was a filmmaker, and he made The Beach, and now he's making Hollywood films. Although he's just said after that film he doesn't want to direct anymore. He says it's just too hard. He's going back to writing because he's in control. But yeah, there's lots of famous writers who've just decided, I'm going to direct now so I can control my vision. So I hope that inspires you as well.
If I ever want to make podcast episodes about my movie ideas, how can I without anyone trying to steal my stories?
Right. The first thing you've got to do is write it down. As soon as it's written down, it's a physical object that can't be stolen. It can still be stolen, but the idea can't be stolen. So if I said to you, Maya, I've got this idea about a talking dog that goes to Mars.
Yes.
And you went away and you wrote that, I'd say, well, that was my idea. And they say, well, prove it. Well, I just said it to you. That doesn't count. But if I had a piece of paper that said, well, here's my idea, and then I say, well, Maya's done that, then I could show that you had taken my idea. So the most important thing is don't tell anyone until you've written it down. Put everything on paper, and then you can talk about it.
Thank you so much, Shane, for joining my podcast. I can't wait to see what you get up to next.
So can I ask you, what made you want to become a filmmaker?
Like I said before, I've grown up with a huge love of movies, which has inspired me to become a world-famous screenwriter.
Can I ask you what your favourite film is?
Singing in the Rain, because as well as being an old movie itself, it also shows some cinema history.
What part of filmmaking do you like the most?
Well, I do want to be a screenwriter, but I have to say, the part of actual filmmaking that I like the most is the costumes and when the actors do what the script says to do.
And who's your favourite actor?
I have a lot of favourite actors, but I've actually admired Nicole Kidman for 2.5 years.
If you could write a big script for Hollywood, what would it be about?
Comedy is my favourite film genre, so probably something funny.
Now, I saw your short film, Spike.
Yes.
Do you want to tell the listeners what it's about?
Yeah, okay, so as the first short film that I've ever made, this animation is about an echidna who is the title character, and he is chased by a female counterpart called Kiki, whom he thinks wants all his ants for herself.
I think it's a metaphor, isn't it, about life?
Yes.
True or false? Filmmaking is easier than podcasting.
Yeah, well, at least I think it's true because I get to see people in person or pictures of people instead of just listening to their voices. One of my movie ideas is a live action jukebox musical called Fabulous, and I actually named it Fabulous after the famous Welcome to Fabulous Las Vegas sign, and it's about a soulful woman called Carol Smith from Memphis, Tennessee, who is on vacation in Las Vegas, and she's staying at the Bellagio Hotel, home to this bar where she dates a jazz-loving bartender called Lucas Wilson, and they must get to know each other and show each other around the city. And another thing that makes this story interesting is that Lucas lost his wallet a few weeks ago and Carol has to try and let him use her money without, wasting it.
Very good. It's like Spike and Kiki, but without the
Yes.
spikes.
Yes. So a few years ago, I was watching a 1950s animated short film created by Dr. Seuss called Gerald McBoing Boing, and it's about this little boy who, as the title character, speaks through sound effects instead of spoken words. And as not many people would know, Audrey Geisel, Dr. Seuss's wife, was so appalled by the Cat in the Hat movie that she decided to reject any future live-action adaptations of her husband's works. And now that she's passed away, I've been hoping to ask Dr. Seuss Enterprises via email for permission to make this one live action Gerald McBoing Boing movie modernised and feature length.
That is a brilliant idea. I remember Gerald McBoing Boing from my childhood.
Yes.
And I heard that Dr. Seuss's estate, they weren't happy with the way the first Cat in the Hat was done. Was the Mike Myers Cat in the Hat?
Yeah,
that's right.
that one.
Yeah. I think you should maybe, because Spike is very good, could you do something small? Like if you did something small, like just a minute of something in the vein of Gerald McBoing Boing, and then you said to them, have a look at this. If I was this Dr. Seuss estate, I'd go like, she's serious and she's very good at what she does.
Yeah, Matteo Mazzella, whom I see every Wednesday, suggested that too.
And you did Spike together, yeah?
Yeah, what we did.
I think Spike's very impressive. And then if you did something with Matteo and just said, you can obviously, you're not allowed to copy the style of another artist, but if you're doing it to show the artist, then you're not exploiting them, you're using it to impress them. So I think that's a really good idea.
Yes.
Please do that.
I will. Well, Shane, crying in a movie scene can be pretty hard, but I think that one way to get someone to cry is to put an onion in front of their face.
That's true. There's a lot of famous Hollywood stories about when Shirley Temple was in a movie and they had to make her cry. The director evidently went up and whispered to her before they turned the camera on, "Your dog is dead."
Yes.
Which is very cruel. And so directors do lots of emotional tricks, which I don't recommend personally. And you can see that when you watch films. You sometimes see actors or actresses and then they cut back and they've got this one glycerine tear which someone just went bang and they're pretending they're sad. But the best way is, a good actor should be able to cry on cue because they will draw on emotional memories and be able to experience an emotion and then translate that to a scene in your film. When I was a director, I was having problems when I was a young director, and then I realised I need to know more about acting, so I became an actor for a few years, and that taught me a lot about how they behave. And so then as a director, I was able to talk their language. And so when you say things like that, you're not just saying, please cry. If I said now, please cry, you'd find that very hard, or please get really angry. And so if you can find a situation that can make the actor feel safe to actually explore those emotions, then you'll get really true, which is why we like certain actors, because they're true and honest and they're really experiencing that emotion. But if not, onions work.
As a director, does anyone find it funny when you say cut or action?
That's a really good question, because when you watch Hollywood movies, the director stands there and goes, and action, and cut. But
Yes.
in our filmmaking industry, the director doesn't get to say action.
Yeah.
It's the first assistant director who gets the actors ready and runs the crew. The director normally sits there and just watches. Some directors will say, I'm going to do it anyway, and that's fine. But generally, the first idea, but it is up to the director to say cut when they get what they want and they say stop.
Yes.
And I heard that Clint Eastwood, when he directs, he doesn't say action. He just goes, turn on the cameras, and he'll wait and go, wait for a little bit and then go, and now. So every director has a different way of getting an actor ready for a performance. And some directors like to roll the scene past the end of the scene to get something that's probably true when an actor's in a bit of nervousness about my line is over but I'm still in character, and sometimes you get those little moments of truth. So yeah, every director is different.
This is one of my minor ideas for Fabulous, but at the Gin and Celli's fine Italian cuisine and jazz bar, which I named after our extended Gincelli family, Carol Smith and Lucas Wilson dance the Tarantella Napolitana, a traditional Italian dance using English and Italian lyrics for the song. I think I'll call this song the Tarantella alla Gin and Celli. The music is played by a ragtime jazz band made up of the 5 Rossi brothers, aka Fratelli Rossi in Italian, including lead singer Alberto Rossi, whom I named after Frank Sinatra's middle name, Albert. The Rossi brothers were born in Italy, but originally started their band in Little Italy, NYC, in 1972. They wear tuxes based on Don Vito Corleone and fedoras based on Frank Sinatra. There are spotlights in all the Italian flag's colours, green, white and red. At some point during the song, Carol points at a framed photo of Don Corleone on the wall and says, "Hey, Godfather." Also on the wall could be taxidermy figures of the same horse head that Jack Waltz discovers in his bed, and the same Sicilian fishy message that means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes. During the dance, the police watch the spotlights from outside the restaurant and think they're shining on Lucas's wallet. At the end of the song, a waiter throws a serving tray of pizza tricola up into the air and catches it in one hand when he kneels down on one knee. Pizza tricola is a pizza with toppings in all the colours of the Italian flag: green basil, white bocconcini and red pepperoni or tomatoes. Also, red roses are thrown onto the stage where the Rossi brothers are playing, but Lucas picks one up and puts it in his coat pocket to remember his special night at the restaurant. After their visit to Gincelli's, Carol walks home with Lucas feeling so tired from all this spaghetti carbonara that she's eaten that she hardly feels like any dessert at all. "Not even a single cannelloni," says Lucas to Carol at this point. Carol answers, "First of all, it's called a cannoli, and I'd rather just wrap myself up like one, as in go to sleep, that is."
Very good. That is brilliant. It's very visual. As you were saying it, I'm seeing it in my head, which is that's a good sign of a good writer. You're evoking images. I obviously take it you're a fan of The Godfather.
I've seen this. Well, I made it to the end of this movie last year, and now I'm trying once again. In fact, I'm usually a kids movie person, but I'm trying to get used to heavier movies too.
It's a very good movie. It is quite heavy, but it's it's probably one of the best films ever made. So
Yes.
good place to start, as long as you're not too fond of horses for that scene. So you didn't finish the movie, almost.
Well, I'm pretty much up to the middle.
It's very good. Yes, it's got a very powerful ending.
Yes.
Have you been to Vegas?
No, no, but two places I have been to in the United States is New York City twice and this place in Colorado called Vail once.
What's that like? I don't know it.
Well, it actually has a ski resort, but when I was riding in one of these chairlifts to the top of the mountain, it wouldn't actually stop like a bus to let me off.
And it keeps moving, and you have to sort of just jump, or you get
Yeah.
go back.
I have to jump off the chair before it turns around.
Did you do it?
Yeah, but it wasn't very easy.
And how'd you like New York?
Yeah, it was really great.
Was it like the movies?
Yeah, pretty much.
Did you see anyone famous?
No.
Well, you were there.
Well, yeah.
Apart from you.
Yeah. Well, we didn't really meet anyone famous, but my family says that one time when we were at a restaurant there, Rebel Wilson was also sitting there.
There you go. And did you go to Central Park?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's one of the few places in the world where, well, just for me, I thought everyone felt welcome. I thought even though it's a big city, it feels like very welcoming, and everyone was very friendly, being an Australian. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go for a holiday?
I would have to say somewhere sunny like Florida or California.
Yeah. You should go to California and go to Hollywood.
Yes.
So Maya, tell me, where did the idea for Spike come from?
Because I'm Australian, that I'd start my career with some short films set in Australia or where they speak Australian English, and Spike is actually set near Ayers Rock, as you might have noticed.
And why you did that so it's distinctly Australian?
Yes, I did that so that people would recognise the setting of this film.
And echidnas. There's nowhere else in the world.
Yeah, nowhere else in the world that I would set this film, if that's what you mean.
Yeah. I liked it very much. It's a beautiful little film.
Thanks. And I think I should ask, but what was your favourite part of that film?
I liked it when Kiki turned up, because I didn't expect that.
Yep.
And then the chase, and then I thought it was going to be a competition, and then it turned out to be an understanding of friendship and maybe love.
Thanks.
I'm going to look at ants a little bit differently now. When I see a bunch of ants,
Yes.
I'll think, how could they lead me to find my love? Although I'm not an anteater. But that's what we were saying. That's like, what if somebody followed a train of ants and they bumped into somebody? That's where films come from, those little what if.
Yes. I just thought I'd start my career with something iconically Australian.
Yeah. Did you see an echidna when you were at Uluru?
No, but not really. But I suppose that there were a lot of ants near the rock. I actually saw one, or maybe a few echidnas, at this Australian native animal park somewhere in the Northern Territory.
And where'd the idea of the ants come from? Like, obviously, an echidna wants to chase ants, and then you had the idea there'll be another echidna?
Well, I don't think that idea came from anywhere in particular. I just thought people would like a romance film from me, first of all.
Yeah, it's just a nice, beautiful film that says a lot about you, which is all what writers do. They want to talk to the world and say what they think.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Maya, for being on my mini podcast today, and I wish you all the best with the career, and you can talk to me anytime if you need any advice.
Thanks.